Welcome to Women Entrepreneurs Radio. I'm your host, Deborah Bailey. And when I started this show in 2008, I was on a mission to promote women-owned businesses and help women succeed by providing resources and valuable tips from other women and men, small business owners. In each interview, my guests speak openly about their triumphs, the scary times, and tough decisions they had to make along the way. Women Entrepreneurs Radio is about showing women how to harness their natural strengths to achieve success on their own terms. Hi everyone, welcome to Women Entrepreneurs Radio with your host Deborah Bailey, and I'm so glad you could join us today. And if you are listening to this show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, it's also on other podcast platforms, you can find the links for all the platforms if you go to womenentrepreneursradio.com and click on the podcast in the menu. Then you can find out all the different podcast platforms that the show is available on, and you can subscribe to your favorite one. And also that site has different bios of the show guests and articles of interest to women in business. And particularly if you are on Apple Podcasts, you can scroll down and you can leave a review, you can leave a rating, and that would be wonderful because that will help the show to be found by more listeners. So it's really easy, and I hope you'll do it if you've enjoyed the show. So you can also visit my site at dbaileycoach.com to find out more about me and my books and online classes. So I hope you will also check that out as well. So we're going to get started today with my guest, Melanie Herschorn. And she's had extensive knowledge about the process of starting a business from scratch, curating the best digital marketing content for your niche, and creating effective writing to attract your ideal customer. And a small business owner for 7 years, Melanie can provide guidance and encouragement that you need to succeed. And Melanie, whose award-winning maternity designs have been sold on Nordstrom.com and at other retailers nationwide, has also worked as a print, radio, and TV journalist and as a PR specialist in Hollywood. And she's won numerous journalism awards and received her master's degree in broadcast journalism from the University of Southern California. And Melanie lives in Phoenix, Arizona with her husband, daughter, son, and her Cavalier King Charles Spaniel, Marty McDog. So welcome to the show, Melanie. So we're glad to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here, and so is Marty. He's sleeping at my feet.
Well, that's fine. He can join in if he'd like to.
Dogs have a lot to say about digital marketing, so.
Hey, why not?
Why not? The more the merrier.
Right? Why not? There's so many people out there giving various opinions and everything, and we certainly are going to cover that in particular for the solopreneur. But, Melanie, I always ask guests how you get started and what you do.
Okay. I wonder if their answers take you around in circles the way my answer will.
Usually.
Probably, right? So when I graduated from college back a very, very long time ago in a different millennium, I decided that I was going to run away from Canada and move to Hollywood. I happened to be born in the States, and so I was always American. I just didn't have any family in the country. So I decided to just go to Hollywood. I packed bags. I also had a boyfriend there at the time, which kind of helped. But I packed bags and I went, and I just hit the ground running, and I was interning, and then I got a job at a boutique PR firm. So I was hanging out with celebrities and walking the red carpets and, seeing, it sounds super glamorous, but really behind the scenes, it's really not that glamorous. And, I missed So I really wanted to get into writing. I wanted to, but you don't actually do as much writing as I thought when you're working with celebrities. And there's a lot of, personalities. So when I was told off on my birthday by a prominent comedian twice, I decided.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I was like, okay, you know what? I think that is the universe not so subtly telling me that this is what I need to get out and do something else. So that's when I went to journalism school, and I loved it. And then when I graduated, I ended up moving to Pennsylvania, and I was on the radio there for several years. Then I got laid off when I was 5 months pregnant, and got picked up, right? And I got picked up by a newspaper, and I worked there until finally we moved to Phoenix when my daughter was a baby. And then I got here and I was like, you know what? I love journalism, but I'm a little bit burnt out, and I don't think I can afford childcare and also work, because I mean, you really don't make a lot in news. You unless you're, at the top of your game, you're at like almost the poverty line. And so it wouldn't have made sense for me to get childcare, because I would have been paying the daycare or the babysitter more than I was earning. So I was like, okay, well, what can I do now? So I had this nagging thought that I couldn't shake. And it was, you must make breastfeeding clothing. And which, when I say it out loud, it sounds absolutely ludicrous, which it is, but I couldn't shake it. I was like, this is my calling. This is my calling. This is what I have to do. I have to do this. And I was like, okay, I don't know the first thing about doing this, but I will figure it out. So I did. I found a manufacturer, like a local manufacturer. She was just basically just sewing it by hand. And I built up till I was manufacturing in California and going to trade shows and getting my stuff worn by celebrities and, selling my clothing on Nordstrom.com for a few years. And it was, it was amazing, and it was also terrible. And I saw the writing on the wall. It wasn't working. It just wasn't working. And I said, okay, I gotta just wrap this up. It's time to wrap this up. I'm not using my brain as much as I love to. And what can I do now? And I thought, well, what's the one thing I've enjoyed this whole 7 years doing this is the blog writing, the email marketing, the communication aspect of it, having a product and getting to come up with a marketing message and all that stuff. So it was really the marketing. So I, closed the business-ish and decided to do this. And now I do VIP digital content where I'm writing blog content and email marketing and doing social media management for people. And I also teach people, I coach women entrepreneurs how to do it themselves so that they don't ever get duped and go broke because of somebody that promises something that they don't deliver, which is what happened to me.
Wow. So I guess you have had that person who said they could do something for you, for your company, and then they really didn't.
Well, I mean, there was emotional abuse that went on for about a year. This person said they would do my social media management and help me with my email marketing. And what happened was every time I attempted to do it, I was told that it was boring and dumb. And I started to believe it.
Oh no.
And it took me, it was a lot of money that I spent. I didn't get a lot out of it, and I was stuck, and it was a really uncomfortable situation. And I could see like, okay, I can see how I'm being treated and that I'm paying to be treated like this. And I see that this is nuts, but I'm afraid that this person is going to, ruin my business. Go out and tell the people online that how terrible my business is and, put me under. So in the end, when I closed the business, I was able to just wash my hands of this and say, you know what, I'm going to take everything that I did learn and use it for good. So that's what I do. I use it for good, not evil. No evil here.
Wow, that's bad that you have to go through that though.
I hate telling this story.
Yeah,
but I tell it because people have to know that you can't just trust the first person that you meet that says, oh yeah, I do social media management. I grew the so-and-so's page to 10,000. Like, okay, great.
Well, that's true because everybody who comes with these promises isn't always someone that you should trust.
Right.
But they come across in a way that makes people think if you're not really sure, you just need someone to do the job and they're going to present themselves in a way that sounds wonderful. And then you start dealing with them.
But I think that what it comes down to is you have to trust your gut.
Yes, that's true.
And I think that so much when you're an entrepreneur, you kind of really have to trust your intuition. And unfortunately, I was sort of over a barrel and I knew what my intuition was telling me. It was saying, run! But I was in too deep to be able to break free. So. Right.
Yeah, that's rough. And I'm sure many people can identify with that experience because they've had something similar, unfortunately. But, we were going to cover this topic, or we are covering this topic about marketing your business as a solopreneur. And this kind of, leads into it because if people are at a point where they need to do the marketing, they're not sure what to do. They have so much on their plate. They don't know who to trust. How do people even get started? How they determine what they should do and who they can reach out to?
Okay. Well, it starts with knowing what your message is. So if you don't know what the message of your brand is, that's something you want to figure out. And you don't necessarily need to hire somebody for $1 million to figure that out for you. You can always do your own marketing. What's the word I'm thinking about? Like you can ask people who are in your ecosystem already. You can kind of do your own reconnaissance and say, well, what do you think about my brand? What do you think of when I say the name, whatever? And then you just want to keep refining it. And once you know what your brand message is, then you want to figure out who your ideal client and customer is. Because then once you know who that is, then you can sort of figure out where to start doing your marketing. A lot of times, people will come to me and they'll say, well, I'm on Instagram, and I'm on Facebook, and I'm on Twitter, and I'm on LinkedIn, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't know where to go next. And I say, okay, dial it back, take a deep breath. Let's figure out who your ideal client is, and then we'll know where they're hanging out online. Because maybe you don't need to be spending hours on LinkedIn because maybe that's not where they are. So it's really important to figure out who you're speaking to, who you're selling to, and then you can determine what procedure and plan you should follow. So it's definitely, there are steps to take. You don't, and one thing is you actually don't need to have your full product or your full service up and running before you start promoting yourself. And you also don't need a very expensive website. That's another thing. So often people spend, $3,000 to $5,000 on a website, and it doesn't even have the right marketing messaging. It's just, that was the first thing they did. They knew they had a list and they said, okay, I'm going to check off business cards and I'm going to check off website. And I would actually advise to wait on that and figure out what your message is and who you're trying to attract and who you're trying to serve and what you're trying to do. And then all of that stuff will sort of gel and come together. So where to start? That's where to start. Do you have to be on Instagram? Not necessarily. Do you have to be on Facebook? Often it's a good idea, but it isn't always 100% because if, let's say your market skews younger, people who are in the Gen Z, they're not always on Facebook. In fact, many of them are not on Facebook at all. Mm-hmm. So if you're selling, cool unicorn earrings and you want to give it to, you want to sell it to a 17-year-old, they're probably not on Facebook. Mm-hmm. They're on Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, although things with TikTok are a little dicey these days.
Yeah. That's what I've seen.
But that's political.
Right.
So I would say that, don't get overwhelmed. It's easy to do. Mm-hmm. But you can always ask somebody what they think. Someone like me, for example. I have a Facebook group where all I do is teach people about digital marketing and cover all sorts of different things because it's so important for people to know. Because once you know, then you can make decisions based on having the knowledge. Mm-hmm.
I find that a lot of times there's a big push for people to buy advertising. And do you think there's a point where the small business owners should really wait until they make those kinds of advertising?
I would highly endorse waiting. Mm-hmm. I don't want to say business model, but my MO is I'm not trying to spend more of your money. Mm-hmm. Let's see what we can do based on your, sweat equity and get it done. Because if you don't have a person who knows what they're doing with Facebook ads, for example, you're just throwing good money after bad. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you don't have a place to lead these people, what are you advertising for? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I think ads definitely have a place. Absolutely, 100%. But I think you have to be at a certain level before you start using Facebook ads and that you'll see the return on your investment. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't say do it yourself. Don't do it yourself unless you really understand what you're doing.
That's a great thing to say because I had gone on Facebook, the whole the advertising platform at one point, and I found it so convoluted. And I was just trying to figure out what is this. But then you start to say, well, is this really something I need to do or should do? And what am I trying to achieve? Where am I, as you said, trying to get people back to? And a lot of times you don't even know because you just hear these buzzwords and you hear all this stuff and you're like, oh, I need to be there. But you don't know what to do.
Right. A crowd draws a crowd.
Yeah.
But everybody's looking up at the sky. Right. But that doesn't mean you need to look up.
Right.
but that's the thing. I mean, I have taken a course on Facebook ads. I have done Facebook ads and I still feel uncomfortable with Facebook ads. Mm-hmm. And I bring in the experts. I do not purport to be an expert on Facebook ads because it is so nuanced and because they keep changing it all the time. Mm-hmm. From the time I took the course till about 2 months later, they had changed the entire look of the platform.
Oh, wow.
So it's always changing. And so what I would say is, yes, they 100% have a place in your marketing, but maybe not at the beginning. Probably definitely not at the beginning. Because if you aren't sending people to the right place, then you're just throwing away your ad dollars that you could be using on something else that is actually generating. Like, for example, a phenomenal place to start is to have an opt-in, like a lead magnet. Mm-hmm. To create a lead magnet, create a landing page and send people there. That can be done for almost free if you are using MailChimp for free, for example, and Canva where you're creating the PDF. Mm-hmm. And that's a great place to start because people are going to get into your email subscriber list, which now I'm just answering questions you haven't asked yet, but
so we're going to get there. So go ahead.
Let me put the cart before the horse here. Which really is in my opinion, one of the most important things you can do for digital marketing. Okay. Now I'll wait for a question.
Well, that's great because I use Canva and I use MailChimp for my fiction, because I write fiction books, so I have a mailing list for that. So I'm aware, I saw that they also have the landing page and all that kind of thing. So it seems that if a person wanted to start out and do the landing page and build a list before they invested in a website, is that what you think is a good way to go?
You absolutely could do that. I will say, though, that a website is your street cred. Mm-hmm. What's the first thing you do when you find out about a company? You Google them. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So if they don't have a website, it's like, oh, is there something? But that isn't to say that you have to spend $1 million on said website. There are lots of ways that you can get a Squarespace website, which is a lot less expensive. And then when you're ready, you can move up to, pretty much anything. Some people do it through Kajabi. Some people have a Wix website. So it's not the top of the line like a WordPress necessarily, but that way you're not spending the money before you have all your ducks in a row.
That's true. Because you could be putting a lot into that. And you said before you even have a message that you want to.
Right. And it could change. I mean, you could say, I'm going to manufacture candles and they're going to be for people in nursing homes. And then you decide, actually, no, they're going to be for 25-year-olds. Well, that's going to be a completely different marketing strategy. So you're going to have to go and start all over again, even if it's the same candle. So that's why it's really good to have your message really fine-tuned and to, be able to identify who it is who that client is and how you're going to reach them.
Are there certain steps that someone should take if they, when they want to identify that client?
Yeah, I mean, how much time you got?
I know, right? That's a big one.
I have a freebie that your listeners can absolutely download, and it really helps them identify that. I can absolutely give you the link to that.
Yes.
But I don't have it completely ready for them yet. But it's easy to get if they want to join my Facebook group, which is VIP Digital Marketing Tips. I can send it to them there. So basically what you want to do is you want to start finding out the demographic things to start. So are they a boy or a girl? Do they identify as something else if that's who your target is, right? It's really like there are no right answers. It's just you have to answer it. Where do they live? What do they look like? Did they go to school? How far did they get in school? Are they married? Do they have children? How old are they? So then basically all that stuff. Where do they shop? Do they listen to podcasts or do they prefer listening to audiobooks or do they not read at all or whatever this person is. And then you move on to more of the other things, like I guess they call it psychographic. So sort of like what happened in that person's life to make them want to become an entrepreneur so that you can then sell to them if an entrepreneur was your ideal client. So sort of thinking like the deeper stuff. But I mean, it don't even have to get that deep. You can just be like, where did they live? Where do they shop? What magazine do they read? Basically just the sky is truly the limit. But once you answer all these questions for yourself, then you can look at this person, identify it. Some people give them a name so they can be like, oh, well, Sally, blah, blah, blah. And then you could be like, okay, so I know that my client is hanging out on Instagram because she's 25 years old. She lives in Los Angeles. She shops at Kitson and Fred Siegel and she loves to go, she goes, paddleboarding on the weekends or whatever. So you can kind of really hone it in and then you can figure out where they're hanging out online and the best way to reach them.
And that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's a thing that people don't really consider. And I say that because, as any entrepreneur, you can see 1,001 people coming at you with, well, you've got to get your brand here and these are the colors you should have and this is what you should do and this is the template you should use. And It's overwhelming because, as you said, you're not even getting to the heart of the matter yet.
Right. And that's true.
Yeah.
And yes, colors are important and your logo is important, but if you don't know who your logo's for,
yes,
you don't want to offend them with the logo.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true that you really need to get to the heart of who it is. And also, you know, a lot of people, they say, well, I'm my demographic.
Mm-hmm.
And you're probably not actually your demographic. I mean, like Kylie Jenner is her demographic, but in most cases, you're probably not your demographic. Mm-hmm. Or, you know, you think that you know what your demographic wants, but until you do the market research, you really don't necessarily know what your demographic wants. Mm-hmm. Or how they speak about the same thing, or how they speak about what their problems are that you can solve.
That's something I think a lot of people run into because they're using different words that maybe other entrepreneurs use, but they're not using what the customer would use. And I think that hits a lot of the time, unfortunately.
Well, exactly. It's like, so then the customer thinks, are they talking to me? Because it sounds like they're just talking over my head and I'm not interested in this inauthentic brand. It doesn't speak to me.
Exactly. That's part of the issue that I see a lot, that they're using those same words and they think they're talking to their customer who they think they're addressing, but they really aren't. So it sounds like they really have to do the work up front before they can even get into, okay, this is the way I'm going to market.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Now, it doesn't have to be months and months. You know, imperfect action is better than not moving ahead. Mm-hmm. But you should definitely have an idea of who it is that you are reaching out to and what your message is. And you can refine it. You know, it doesn't have to be like, that's it, it's done. Mm-hmm. You can absolutely add to it and change it and rebrand and whatever you need to do. But you don't want to offend people right out of the gate or completely miss the mark right out of the gate. So I would recommend doing some market research. You know, ask people you know who fall into your demographic certain questions about whatever it is that you do and see how they respond and see what their suggestions are.
I'm not sure that people really even consider that at first because they're really trying, as you were saying, to get all this other stuff in place before they even get to that point. Mm-hmm.
And you know, there are some people, you know, for example, they sell skincare products. Mm-hmm. Maybe they part of a network marketing and they sell skincare products. Mm-hmm. And you say, well, who's your ideal client? And they say, anyone with skin. This actually happened to me. I said, who's your ideal client? Anyone with skin. And I said, but no, that's not right because everybody has skin, but clearly you're not going to sell to everybody. And you know, and I get it as an entrepreneur. I 100% went through this. I was like, I want everybody who has a baby to wear my nursing clothes. Like everybody, everybody. But not everybody's going to want them. Right. So you have to narrow it down so that you can speak to the people who do want it. And that was a really hard thing for me to finally, you know, there was a disconnect for me because I was like, but everybody, 4 million women in the United States give birth every year. That's 4 million people who can wear my clothes. But no, it's not. And you'll hear this too. When you're trying to talk to everybody, you're talking to nobody. Mm-hmm. So that is really the crux of it. That's the reason behind honing in on who your ideal client is. Mm-hmm. So you can actually speak to people instead of to nobody. Right. That's a good point. Because I think that also gets missed a lot. Yeah. That they're not talking to that one person who is their ideal as far as thinking, I'm going to, you know, hit everybody. And then it doesn't really come out that way. And I think especially for the solopreneur who then thinks, I have to be on every platform and I have to do all this work. And then they start to burn out because they can't be everywhere. Oh, the burnout is real. Yeah. And you have to be judicious and you have to say, okay, well, where is my ideal client hanging out? Mm-hmm. You know, for a solopreneur, especially because you you only have 24 hours in a day and you have to sleep at some point, and maybe you have children and maybe they're even being homeschooled right now. I know that's my situation. And so you have to pick and choose where you truly need to be, and you do not have to be everywhere, because if you're just sort of vomiting out all the same stuff everywhere, is that really going to be effective? Probably not.
I think there's just so much you can do, as you said, and then you're not really as effective because you're trying to cover every single thing. And that takes a lot. It takes a lot out of you, and then people just don't, and they stop doing it.
That's right.
You know?
So if you're putting stuff everywhere, but you're not actually engaging with the people that are responding to you, then you're not doing it the right way. And, you know, and if you're not being consistent, then you're not going to grow your audience, because consistency truly is the key to success in digital marketing. So you're not being consistent. You're not actually responding to anybody. So you're just throwing things up in the air and seeing where they fall, and you're just wasting your time, and don't waste your time.
So when you're talking about consistency, you know, a lot of times we hear, oh, you have to post on X, you know, social media this many times a day or this time of day and all that kind of thing. You know, how would you really define consistency?
Okay, so consistency is different for each platform. I will say, you know, on Instagram, for example, I post once a day, sometimes twice, but what's more important is to always have Insta stories going, because more people see those. For example, on Pinterest, which is a phenomenal platform, you want to have, you know, 10 to 25 pins a day, all the time. And email marketing, for example, you want to email once a week, preferably on the same day if you can. Once a week is great. And with blogging, same thing. When you write your blog post, you want to have it posted once a week. No less than once a week, because it's not going to help you with your SEO. So that's, and in terms of time, you know, I cannot speak to that, because I read something different everywhere I go.
Right.
But if you want to look at your metrics, then you can read them and you can see when your people are most active and post then. So it's more individual.
Yeah, and that makes much more sense than just doing it because someone somewhere said everybody. Right, exactly.
And also, I will say with your Facebook business page, which is kind of like a given that you have to have it, unfortunately, it's pay to play. So you can, it didn't used to be like that. You used to post on your business page and people would be like, oh, look, I like that. But now nobody sees it unless you're paying for ads. But again, that's a necessary evil. But does it matter when you post on your business page? In my opinion, no, because no one's going to see it anyway. But you need to do it. And with Pinterest, if you use Tailwind, which is this really fantastic partner of Pinterest, they tell you when to post. So you don't even have to think about it. It picks the best times for you. So, I mean, look, I think that instead of, you know, getting your shorts in a bundle about when to post and blah, blah, just do it, and do it consistently. Do it regularly. And whether it's at 3:00 in the afternoon or 5:00 in the afternoon, at least you did it.
Right. That's true.
Which is more than your competitors are probably doing.
I think that's very true, because it's easy to believe that everybody is doing something, but then you realize it's not really true.
Absolutely.
It's not at all.
I mean, with COVID, we've seen an explosion of online coaching, right?
Yes.
Many people are now online coaches. Are they all 6-figure online coaches?
Well, they say they are.
I don't know.
That's true.
I hope for their sake that they are, but I don't know.
Right. And yes, I was just very surprised that so many people weren't really as familiar with online. I just assumed so because, when you're online, you think, oh, of course everybody knows this, that, or the other. And then you're finding out that so many people don't. And it's just a new world for them and they're just not sure of it.
And I think people get embarrassed. Yeah. And I don't think they should because it's not like we were born knowing how to do this.
Right.
I mean, I still had to sit there and watch 2 YouTube videos on Reels, on Instagram Reels to figure out what on earth was going on. But then I figured out why I was having so much trouble, and it's that Instagram hasn't given me access to all the tools, and so I would press things that they were missing, and so that was why I was having trouble. I still don't have music on Reels for some reason, so I can't even do them on my phone. But so yeah, I mean, everything is there might be a big learning curve with it, but once you get the hang of it, it gets easier. Like my gosh, I will never forget. This is such an embarrassing story. I'm just telling you everything today. So I was at the radio station, back in, 2010, and the Speaker of the House, his name was John Boehner. And his last name was not spelled Boehner though.
Right.
It was Boehner.
Right.
But I didn't want to screw up his name when I was saying it on the radio. So I wrote it phonetically in my notes as BAY-NER, so I would say it correctly. Well, it was around that time that Twitter was starting to gain traction. And so in the radio station, we had to tweet every single news headline that we were going to be covering. So this guy, I'm pointing at myself, I accidentally tweeted out the next up, John Boehner will be blah, 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 except it was spelled phonetically. So, of course, the president of the station catches my tweet.
Of course.
And it wasn't my Twitter account. It was the station's Twitter account. So, anyway, so for me, Twitter was a bit of a learning curve. And I remember cursing. I'm like, I hate this Twitter thing. Like, now it's got a life of its own and nobody thinks about it anymore. But it was tough for me to go, okay, well now I have to write this story and now I have to tweet out why do I have to do this? Why?
Right.
John Boehner didn't care, but I did.
Oh my God. Yeah. Things like that. You're like, oops.
Yeah. But again, it was about the learning curve. It was about, this is confusing for me. And I didn't just get to post right into it. I had to go through Hootsuite, which was brand new back then. But now many of us are more accustomed to it. So I just want to say that, I wasn't born knowing this stuff either. I made some really fantastic public mistakes, but here I am today. I survived and you can too.
Well, that's good for everybody, to know, because I think that's a lot of it too. People are so nervous that they are going to make the big mistake and say something or post something that causes a lot of problems for them.
Yeah, I mean, there's an actor who recently, posted a picture of his private parts by accident. I don't know how that happens, to be honest with you.
I was wondering myself.
Were you? Because I don't have pictures of myself in that capacity at all.
I think some people do that, though.
Yeah. But I mean, then you're scrolling through your Instagram and you're, okay, well, I should post this one. And then you accidentally, you really, on Instagram, it's not instantaneous. You actually have to press an extra button to ensure that it gets sent out. So,
I don't know, but
I also, I didn't get to see the photo. So I have to do a deep dive and find that. Oh, you did? Was it good?
It was hard to miss. Yeah, Captain America is.
Yes. So he lives up to his name then, does he?
Oh, for sure. Yep. Yuppers.
See, digital marketing. This all falls under it, guys.
But I was thinking that I guess he could get away with that. Like, I don't know what other feathers maybe ruffle somewhere else.
Well, in politics.
Yeah, but he could kind of get away with that, but everybody wouldn't have been able to get away with it.
No, can you imagine? When a politician does it, that's bad.
Because we probably don't want to see that.
No.
Thank you very much.
No, we don't.
But, yeah, you know, it all depends. But yeah, it can be tricky for people who are, you know, or sometimes some people forget which, social media account they're on, and they may be saying things that they say privately, quote unquote, because how private can it be online?
Right.
But then they're posting from a business account, and then they're like, oh.
Yeah. That, you know, and that's why, you know, it's good to have a little bit of OCD. Just triple check.
Yeah. That's true.
So just to triple check, make sure that you're, you know, if you are on multiple accounts, that's a good idea. Yes. And also, you know, let's get into the ethics of it for a second. Mm-hmm. What you put online is there in perpetuity, really. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I remember having to explain this to my cousin, maybe 10 years ago. And I was saying, why are there pictures of you with pot? And this was before it was legal anywhere. I'm like, why are there pictures of you with pot on Facebook? Because employers are going to look at that and say, no, thank you. Yep. And, you know, that's why it's so important to really think about what you're going to put out there in the world. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I have thoughts, but I don't post them. Usually. I don't want to post anything inflammatory. Mm-hmm. I post about my business, I post about my family, but I'm not in the business of posting things that could come back to bite me later. And just something to consider.
I follow a lot of authors, and, you know, some of them will just post about their books or just general things or whatever. But others, you know, they'll get really into whatever they're annoyed with. And I'm like, are you sure you want to do this? Or maybe that's part of their quote unquote brand, you know, because some people, it is a brand. It's not really that they're really that person. So.
Yes. And that's fine. If your brand is to be super inflammatory, then by all means do that. Right. But just know that you might alienate some people. But again, you know, you don't have to, you're not doing this for everybody. You have your ideal client. Right. So if your ideal client loves when you say, you know, stuff to stir the pot, then amazing. They're going to love what you just said.
Right. Just keep that in mind when you're
exactly. Yes, the takeaway is don't post pictures of your genitals, and unless you're Captain America, and only post things that are on brand.
Please. Please. Just don't. Because it really isn't worth it isn't worth what, you know, some people's dragging. Right. It's just not a good thing, because people will bring that up years later.
Yes. The other takeaway is it's online for good. Even if you think it's deleted, someone's already screenshotted it. So
it never really goes away.
Never goes away.
It's just best to be safe
and
not put yourself into that position. And I think a lot of people have yet to learn that about the online world, unfortunately. Yeah. So, well, Melanie, could you please share where listeners can find out more about you?
Yes, absolutely. I would love that. Okay. So I would love to give your listeners a gift, if that's okay.
Sure.
So they can go to vipdigital.live/email. And I will give you a free email marketing guide and a content calendar. So you can write your content down and plan ahead, and also really get the basics of email marketing so that you can grow your list and send out awesome emails. So that's vipdigital.live/email. Then I'll invite you to join my Facebook group where I'm super active. I won't make you. I said make you. I won't make you. I would love for you to. You must. No.
You must.
Or I'll show you Captain America's full frontal. Or maybe that's, if you do join, I'll show you Captain. Oh boy.
Yeah, that's something that will never be forgotten.
No. No.
There'll be a point where you may want to forget, but it will never be forgotten. So yeah, as far as the social media platforms, I know there's always new things coming up all the time. Mm-hmm. And, would you recommend that people kind of stick with what are now, I guess, the major platforms at the moment? Or would it be worth trying to get on, I don't know, whatever the new hot thing is? I mean, does that, as you were saying, it depends a lot on who your market is, but I'm just curious because a lot of times we have that fear of missing out when something new pops up.
We absolutely do. But if your audience is not there, then you would be wasting your time. Mm. So, for example, my audience is not on Snapchat. I am not on Snapchat. Mm-hmm. But there are tons of companies that are on Snapchat and do business that way. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to always go to the new shiny thing. Because it's not like, I'm picturing like people running in a herd from one to another. It's not always like that. Mm-hmm. People don't delete Facebook so that they can join Snapchat.
That's true.
And each one ends up serving a different purpose in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. So, for example, Pinterest is a search engine. People aren't going to stop going on Pinterest just because there's TikTok. Mm-hmm. It serves a different purpose. Mm-hmm. So if there are multiple ones with the same purpose, then ultimately one is going to win out, I think, just like VHS won out over Betamax and, Blu-ray won out over HD. Mm-hmm. So, but if they're not necessarily competitors and they're just competing for your time, I think you don't need to follow the shiny object. You just have to follow it if your people are there too.
That's a good point because there's always that thing that comes up that people go, oh, I should do this, I should do that, or I should do the other thing. And then now they're all over the place again.
Spread thin. Yeah. And not actually being effective with their marketing.
Yeah. Right. That's another problem that continues because there's always going to be that thing that comes.
There's always going to be the new shiny object.
Always. It just keeps going.
I feel like we have a Captain America joke again, but we're just going to from that. Like his shield is really shiny.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. This is not getting old. I hope your listeners are not bored by this Captain America joke.
I didn't see it at first, but I kept hearing about it. Like, okay, where is it? Finally, somebody had a screenshot, of course. So as I'm saying, it's never going to go away. That's
never going to go away. Exactly.
So, whether he wants to continue or not, it's too late now. But yeah, for instance, I was looking at Instagram has their IGTV, and I don't know if that's necessarily been the big thing.
You know what happened? It was very big, and now it's lost its luster. So that's why they brought in Reels, because Reels is to compete with TikTok.
Of course. Yeah. So I had an inkling about.
Yeah, it didn't take off like they thought it would. So. Yeah.
I was wondering about that, so I'm glad that I'm asking the expert here because I really thought they're trying to come up against like a YouTube or I wasn't really sure because YouTube again has its own culture. It does,
and it's a search engine. People don't talk to each other on it.
That's a good point.
So YouTube is a search engine, Pinterest is a search engine, Google is a search engine, and the other ones are people talk to their friends on it.
That's a great point. Cause I think that people don't see that definitions.
Right.
Yeah. And that makes a big difference as far as how you're going to be out there and what you're presenting. And of course, your customer client as well, but that's what I had thought that they were kind of trying to cover that basis.
Yeah, they are. I mean, that with their Insta stories were Snapchat. They took
true.
that, and Reels is TikTok. So they're always coming up with the second best new thing and putting it there. Trying to keep have you seen the Social Dilemma on Netflix?
Yes, I saw that last week.
That's all I want to say about that.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I was not pleased when they were saying, oh, their kids aren't on social media.
Yeah.
And
that's the thing. When I go on social media, it is 90% of the time it is work related, and I don't fall into that rabbit hole because I won't let myself, but it's so easy to do that.
It is.
But, in a way, we as brands, we as entrepreneurs, it's good that we have access to people and to these metrics, that we know what we know the people who are in our demographic are going to see what we're offering. And that they're going to be hanging out in those spaces online. I mean, that's a good thing to know. Not that we're, trying to corrupt their lives and not like that, but on a much smaller scale.
Much
smaller scale.
Yeah, I mean, there's a way to do it. As you were saying about ethics and doing it in a way that is not trying to, hurt someone or be toxic and things like that. But, as we know, unfortunately, for some people, that's the direction that they go in. And I think I always think about like Fire Fest. Was that?
Yeah.
That's when I was like, boy. Not good.
No. And see, for me as an entrepreneur, it is really about serving. Like, I am so happy when somebody says to me, I did a 5-day free workshop recently, and somebody sent me a message and it said, I learned more in these 5 days for free than I have in the last couple courses that I bought. And that to me speaks volumes. Yeah. And that's what fills my heart. It's like knowing that I'm helping, that I'm serving. And so I think that there are so many of us out there that do that. I don't think everybody is a, money hungry, I just made $10,000 in 2 seconds. Click below to figure out what I did. Yeah, not everybody's like that.
Well, that's good. That's good to note because, that is out there, unfortunately, that influence. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of times, business owners will hear that in their hurry. They're in a hurry. They're overwhelmed. And then it sounds plausible, but then.
Right. Well, if you did it, I can too, right?
Yeah.
And
that's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
So, we have to kind of look at it from a different perspective so that we're not wasting time and money and frustration.
Yes. And time is money.
Yeah. It's so true.
It really is.
It's so true. So Melanie, this has been a, wonderful, conversation. And I think we could go on and on because this topic is huge. There's no way to cover everything in it, as we know. So, before we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts to share?
Final thoughts to share. Yes. I think that your message really matters. You as an entrepreneur, your message matters, and that don't let anybody tell you that it doesn't. And just remember that being an entrepreneur is the long game. And, any Hollywood star overnight sensation will tell you it took them 10 years to get there. Overnight is 10 years. And it's the same with being an entrepreneur. Slow and steady wins the race. And it's the same with your digital marketing. So if you're not getting 6 million people following you when you just start your Instagram account, don't give up. The long game.
Wow. Well, that is perfect, because people do begin to think that they have to hit those kinds of numbers.
Of course.
Yeah. And it's not the way it is right now. And then that leads again to frustration and people not following through with their plans because they feel they're not doing, they're not having success. So, oh well. So it's good to hear that. Yeah, you could just stick with it, and you're talking about consistency and everything else, and just know where you're heading and who you're trying to reach. And that's going to make such a difference to your outcome. So, this has been a wonderful conversation, Melanie. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Deb. This has been amazing.
Yes, I've enjoyed it, and I've learned. I love those kind of conversations where I always learn something myself. So, I'm sure the audience has as well. So everyone, make sure that you check out Melanie's site, and of course, all these links will be in the show notes, so you could just, page down and you can see them and follow through and get more information and check out what she's offering and her Facebook group. And I'm sure you'll learn how to have much less stress when you're doing your digital marketing. So once again, it's Women Entrepreneurs Radio with your host, Deborah Bailey. Thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye. Thanks for joining us. You can also join in the conversation on Facebook.com/Women Entrepreneurs and on the website, WomenEntrepreneurSecrets.com. And don't forget to listen in on dvcoach.podomatic.com and on iTunes.